The months. Hi everyone. I am currently separated from my wife. We are both 38. If we divorce, money will have been a big factor. If we do not divorce, at this point I'm concerned about being able to create a new life for myself and my daughter, 3, and also about being able to attract a new mate. A little background. In my 20s I did very well. I actually dropped out of college because I was doing so well. But I was a partier and only concerned at the time for the here and now, so to make a long story short, I spent most of the money. When my wife came along, I was in my late 20s and just starting to get to the point where I was growing up. But my wife was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, so she was expensive. She had no concept of the value of a dollar, and money burned a hole in her pocket. So, I paid all of her bills, she made very little, and we managed to save nothing because we spent to the lifestyle that she was accustomed. Looking back, I was a little concerned, but I thought things would be fine eventually. Even though my wife is a spender and has an entitlement problem with money, she is not a keep-up-with-the-Jones type. More like expensive dinners, night outs, $5 coffees, etc. I reasoned that my income would most likely continue to rise over time, and that big houses and fancy cars weren't her thing. So I could live with going out to eat too often and having her blow too much money on lunches with friends, too many weekends away and so forth. Plus, at that time I was spending too much money myself, so I felt it hypocritical to make too much of an issue out of it. Anyway, fast forward a couple of years later and we got married. About that time, the bottom started to fall out of the industry that I work in. Over time, my income was cut in half, then after my daughter was born, a third. My wife stopped working when my daughter was born, so we lost her income, but even if she had continued to work, all of it would have gone to daycare. Anyway, things began to unravel as I wasn't earning enough to pay our basic living expenses. I felt then that things would turn around in time, but the lack of money caused big problems. My wife started sharing our money problems with her parents, who somehow came to believe that my falling income was indicative of a responsibility problem on my part. Her parents and I had several conversations that got progressively more and more nasty. No amount of logic and numbers was enough to convince them that the problem was income-based and not money management-based. Eventually, they pushed very hard for my wife and I to become separated as a kind of tough love strategy for me to get my stuff together. So here is where I stand today. This is embarrassing to even admit. I will make about $35,000 this year in a high-expense area. After child support is taken out of my check, I have about $14,000 left over per month, not nearly enough to survive on my own. What's worse, my wife is going after more money from me. I assume she will lose. Right now, that $14,000 is gone to lawyers and there is no money for car payment, gas, rent, anything. I am temporarily staying with my mother and stepfather. My car was repossessed. I've been sued by creditors. I owe everyone. I am rough shape these days. I have never told my story, mostly because it is so terrible that many wouldn't even believe it. To be very brief, the day I found out about my wife's affair was about a year ago. At the time we were separated but planning on being reunited as a family in 6 weeks. I found out by using her phone to call the OM. She responded by calling the cops on me. The cops did nothing, but she filed for a restraining order and got it. 1 full month later I was arrested and charged with assault. I had never been in trouble before in my life. I was not accused of putting my hands on her at all, just putting her in fear, even though I wasn't accused of specifically threatening her, and they came to my job and arrested me. At the time I thought it must have been a mistake, or even a joke. All it was an argument in which I had barely even raised my voice. My former mother-in-law, who hates me, then tried to leverage this arrest into getting me to sign away my parental rights. My daughter means everything to me and I have taken care of her since birth. Of course, I declined, thinking this type of evidence should prove that the charge was nonsense. I was wrong. Even though it was a misdemeanor, and even though there were no witnesses or evidence or any kind whatsoever, and even though I have no criminal record, I was thrown in prison for 30 days. Since that time my ex and her mother-in-law have been fighting to keep me away from my daughter. My ex-mom has accused my father, mother, stepfather, and brother of being abusers. None of them have ever been in any trouble of any kind whatsoever. When we go to family court, it seems as if they just throw false accusation after false accusation out there and they are believed, while nothing that I say is taken seriously. Even though I have a mountain of evidence of their wrongdoing, including abusive text messages, emails, and witnesses that can testify to this, but I've never been able to get the judge to let the witnesses testify or the evidence admitted. I've lost my job. I've gained a ton of weight. I've mostly lost my relationship with my daughter. They have tried to have me arrested twice since that time, and I have no doubt there will be more accusations to come. Still trying to maintain hope in the face of overwhelming adversity. I will never give up on my daughter. There is a custody trial coming up and I hope to win close to 50-50 joint custody, but will it be worth the paper it's printed on? Unfortunately, I think not, as my ex and my ex-mom will just withhold my daughter and make me chase them. The police will not get involved. There is a restraining order. I cannot contact her in any way. Believe me, she's not going to lift it anytime soon. I have a lawyer for divorce. As far as a girl, my lawyer recommended against it as I live in one of the worst areas in the country for fathers. According to 2 lawyers that I've spoken to, girls almost always side with the mother where I live. I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. There have been amendments to the restraining order, but to make a very long story short, anything that I say, no matter how nicely I say it, is used as an opportunity for my ex or her mother to claim that I am harassing or abusing her. For example, we negotiated that I would be able to say goodnight to my little one every night. Problem is, they never take the calls. So naturally I put it in the journal to please make sure I get my goodnight phone call, as my little one's relationship with her father is very important. This was used as an opportunity to claim that I was harassing her. I took her to court for contempt, and I had phone records and witnesses, but the judge would not allow the witnesses to testify and would not look at the phone records. Instead, she lectured me on controlling my anger, then ruled against me. I was dumbfounded. Believe me, any and all legal angles have been covered by me 1,000 times over. I have tried everything, and I continue to try everything. I won't ever give up on my little girl, but this is really taking its toll. My whole family has taken abuse from my ex and her mother. Honestly, I didn't tell whole of the story. It is amazing what they have been allowed to get away with. Her knee-jerk reaction was to play the victim card and take out a restraining order on me. The amazing part of my story that I didn't elaborate on is that the criminal charges were not filed against me until 4 days after the argument. Here is how it went down. The day of the restraining order hearing, 4 days after the incident, my mother and I were approached by my ex-mom. She told us that my ex did not want to continue going through the courts to resolve our issues, and we all should have a talk instead of them pursuing the restraining order. I agreed, and my ex and her mother had a discussion a few minutes later. At the time, I saw the discussion as a potential opportunity to work things out, so my plan was to hold my ex accountable for what she had done and see if we could find a way to get through it. The discussion turned ugly very quickly, as my ex and her mother refused to admit that my ex and I were involved in a reconciliation attempt, or that we were planning on moving in together, or that she cheated. Now keep in mind that at the time, my ex was spending 5 nights a week at my house. We were looking at apartments. We were talking on the phone multiple times a day. We were sleeping together all the time. We had told my daughter that we were moving in together as a family. As I pointed out all of these facts, my ex and her mother both absolutely lost, screaming at me and my mother at the top of their lungs in a totally filthy manner. I ended up kicking them both out of my house. They then drove to the courthouse and filed these charges against me. Of course, no one in the criminal justice system cared that these charges were obviously retaliatory in nature. I'm fighting for full custody, not 50-50. It's obviously not going to happen right away, but there is no way in good conscience I can sit and watch while my ex and her mother raise my daughter to be like them. I have to fight. As to a potential false abuse claim, I am fully prepared for that eventuality. I actually think my ex is already angling to try it, as she has been making comments to my mother and her lawyer about sleeping arrangements of the child. She has her own bed, obviously, and things of that nature. I think the tactic I'm going to take is that moving forward, I'm going to videotape every single moment of my visitations with my daughter. My ex and her boyfriend already broke up, so that's done. I am very concerned for my daughter, though. My ex-mom-in-law is an abuser of the worst sort. It's taken me a while to get here, but I now understand that the reason my ex is so screwed up is because of her mother. My ex isn't an abuser like her mother, but it's irrelevant because my ex lives with her mother and her mother is driving the bus. I don't know the half of it. My ex actually robbed my mother out of $25,000, and after my mother filed the police report, the cops wouldn't arrest her. I was dumbfounded. They put me in jail over an argument, but she robbed someone and they don't care. The other thing that happened is that my ex-mom basically tried to extort $4,000 from me prior to me going to jail, along with trying to get me sign away my parental rights, all this for dropping the allegation, which was false to begin with. In family court it has been lie after blatant lie. For example, she tried to paint my exposure as me abusing her family members. She claimed I called her names, harassed her family repeatedly, and they were afraid for my child because of it, etc. Meanwhile, I sent one Facebook exposure message which was as polite as you could possibly get. She tried to claim I was arrested for assault and battery on a police officer, which is just a flat-out made-up lie. She claimed when I call my daughter, I hang up on her. Ridiculous. She claimed that my mother watches my daughter on my visits while I go out partying. Never happened, not even once. She claimed I never visited my daughter in gymnastics. Total lie. She claimed my stepfather abused her and called her names. Luckily, my mother and I were sitting there listening to the conversation in question, and it never happened. She claimed my father is an alcoholic and child abuser. Neither are remotely true. The other thing she did, which I didn't mention, is that while I was in jail, she filed to have me arrested for not paying child support for the 3 weeks while I was in jail. The day after I got out, I was served with a court summons. This probably costed my ex-mom $1,000 to do, because her attorney filed it, because the child support agency wouldn't help her because I only owed 3 weeks. My $1,039 has tormented my family and especially my mother. She goes to bed crying most nights these days because she is terrified of this woman and what she will do. It's been a rough time, to say the least. On top of all this, the IRS is after me. I am a former political activist and tax protester. After much thought and consideration, I've decided to try and work things out with them if I can. They say that I owe them $107. The truth is it's more like $30, but an additional garnishment on my paycheck is death in the short and long term. I probably owe the state around $10,000 to $15,000 as well, and they are next to come after me. So, as you can see, things are very bad. My industry has shown signs of turning around, but it's like 3 times as much work these days, and the carrot always seems like it's a year away. Going back to school is not realistic as I have a child to support and I have zero time. Believe it or not, my job is 50+ hours a week. Changing industries might be in the cards, but I at least need to get a car and get it insured. I can get a ride to work now, which is totally out of reach for me at this time. It's not possible unless the ex makes the mistake of moving. As bad as my ex and her mother's behavior has been, the system itself has been worse. I would never have believed how rigged against fathers the court is unless I had lived through it. As bad as family court has been, the criminal system has been much worse. They tried to put me away for 5 years, based on a misdemeanor assault argument. With no battery, no witnesses, no evidence, and she signed a form the day of the incident, with the police, saying she wouldn't file a restraining order. When they put me in jail, I was sent to a maximum security prison for the first 2 weeks of my sentence. That experience in itself is worthy of another thread. I could write a book. It was awful. Meanwhile, in family court, my ex has repeatedly violated every court order we've ever had, and I have yet to win a contempt finding despite the fact that I have mountains of evidence. I do believe I've made some progress in this area, however, as I believe the judge is starting to catch on to their games. The next time I bring them to court, I believe I'll win. But practically speaking, I'm probably 3 wins away from the judge actually doing anything to my ex. Still trying to fight the good fight, though. I've been struggling with something in my case. Right now, when I see my daughter, my mother or stepfather will drop off my daughter after the visit. Inevitably, my former mother-in-law will use this drop-off as an opportunity to wreak havoc. She will either try to start a fight, or she will make some sort of outrageous demand that will in turn cause my whole family to fight. My mother-in-law is a master at picking out an issue that she knows will cause arguments for me and my family. As such, my mother is going through marriage problems because of this woman. Anyway, the alternative is to modify the restraining order so that all pickups and drop-offs happen at the police station. Of course, no one in my family thinks I should do it that way because it would hurt my daughter. I feel as though I have no choice. The other alternative would be to always have a witness with me for pickups and drop-offs. But that is probably not realistic in the medium to long term. Unfortunately, my state is a 2-party state, so VAR is out. One good thing is that my mother-in-law is someone that simply cannot control herself. I know that it's just a matter of time before she goes off in front of a judge, or cop, or gal, or something of the sort. Another reason why I won't give up. Believe me, I've had the don't engage conversation with my family a million times. This problem is that my family is literally terrified of her. If she does not get her way, there is always a punishment that follows, and oftentimes that punishment involves using my child as a weapon against me by withholding visitation. She is also skilled at doing it during a time that leaves me powerless to do anything about it. Example, right before a court date and no time to file contempt and be heard by a judge prior to court. Or there will be accusations that result from her not getting her way. Or the not engaging will be used against us in some way. I truly believe the best solution is for her to have to face me. I will not let her get away with this stuff. Period. I'll just say I won't discuss that with you. I've seen all of her tricks and I know what to expect from her. My mother-in-law is driving this entire bus. She has badmouthed me almost from day one to my wife. When we got separated, it was because my mother-in-law convinced my wife that a separation would be best for my marriage. When we got back together, my mother-in-law introduced my wife to OM and invited him over to their home several times to get them to hook up. Once we got separated, wife moved into mother-in-law's house and I was banned from ever going there by mother-in-law. My criminal lawyer even told me that the DA told her that my wife did not want to prosecute for her BS accusation. But my MIL wanted me to go to prison for 5 years. My wife has never been strong enough to stand up to her mother. My guess is that her mother has been threatening my wife to do it her way or face eviction from her home, or worse. She truly planned to destroy my marriage, and she did. Now she is trying to destroy me, which she won't. I lost my job due to the legal trouble, but in the long term I surely like this strategy. Need to find a new job. Thing is, it's tough to keep a job right now with all of this legal stuff. I'd have to miss a lot of work, unfortunately. Rough day today. I had my final mediation session yesterday before trial and it was a disaster. Their lawyer offered absolutely nothing. They offered to give me a small amount of time on Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Christmas Eve, and that's it. Obviously, this is time that I'll receive no matter what. Of course, even if I receive it, they won't honor the parenting time most likely, so I'll have to chase it after the fact by filing contempt motions. Their attorney also told me they are going to take away my parenting time due to my criminal incident. That's not going to happen, as even a convicted felon gets every other weekend. I have only a misdemeanor, fortunately. I miss my daughter. The last time she stayed over, she said to me, "Dada, me yes, her this is my favorite night, because I get to spend it with you. It hurts so bad to be away from her." Update: nothing good to report. Unfortunately, this keeps getting worse and worse. I did not get to see my daughter over the holidays. The enemy camp claimed that I chose not to see her, which couldn't be further from the truth. There was an ugly incident involving my ex-mom and my mother. The ex-mom screamed at the top of her lungs at my mother. I responded by telling my ex-mom that if she ever raised her voice to my mother again, I would go to the police and file assault charges against her. The result is that they no longer take any of my goodnight phone calls, so I don't get to speak to my daughter anymore unless it's during a visit. I may have to fire my attorney. I have insisted that the next time we go before the judge, he mentions a couple of things: her mother's assault on my mother, their offer to drop the criminal charges in exchange for me signing away custody. I don't think he is willing to do it. I don't think it is politically correct for the man to defend himself in this way. He hasn't even been returning my calls. I have accepted that this battle can't be won without finding a way to clear my name. I've thought of writing a short book or screenplay, trying to find a reporter to write about my story, anything to change things. As it stands right now, no one will listen to what I have to say. More disappointment to report. I heard from my ex by text for the first time in 2 years the other day. I didn't recognize the phone number, so I texted back, "Who is this?" No response, so I called, and my ex picked up. I hung up immediately. She called back twice and left a message for me to call back. Of course, no way was I going to risk this with an outstanding restraining order. So, I didn't call back. What does she then do? She goes to the police and tries to get me arrested. It didn't work, but it was a stressful couple of days. This weekend was very hairy. My ex-mill tried every dirty trick in the book to prevent my parenting time. To make a very long story short, after fighting with everything I've got, I got to see my daughter. The end of the visit was absolutely heartbreaking as she cried her eyes out, not wanting to leave. I need to do something. I need a better plan. My daughter needs me and my hands are tied. I can't even go by her preschool to see her, because part of the restraining order is that I can't go there. I need to fight harder. I promised my little girl that I would never give up on her, and I have to keep that promise. Well, she already has physical custody, but we share joint legal custody. If it were so easy to give up legal in exchange for more time with my daughter, I would have already done it. Their goal is to get me totally out of my daughter's life. I have to fight for every second I get with her. One of the biggest problems that I face is that I live in one of the worst jurisdictions in the country for fathers. I have tried a lot of the suggested tactics I read about on the forum, but they have all failed, for various reasons. But I won't give up. There is an investigation underway, which I cannot talk about at this time. I am hopeful it will be resolved in my favor. Other than that, things are horrible. I have to be in the mood to defend myself against the inevitable vicious attacks that I'm sure a post updating my situation will elicit. It's his fault he is being abused crowd, I'm fairly certain, will be chomping at the bit. My critics are going to have a field day with this one, and rightly so. If there are Christians that are listening, please give me some feedback and make it as harsh as you want. So, prior to getting together with my wife, I was involved in a very intense 5-year relationship with the woman that at the time I thought would become my wife. To make a very long story short, there were huge mistakes made by both of us during the relationship. The relationship ended very, very badly. She left me for the man she married. I said horrible things as a result. I did horrible things as a result. That relationship has been up until this time a wound that never healed on my soul. I was the bad boy, he was the stable guy, and she married the stable guy and dumped the bad boy. That was 7 years ago. A few days ago, she contacted me out of the blue. I was standoffish at first, cynical. I thought maybe her husband stepped out on her and she was going to use me to get back at him. I wasn't really going along with it, but she told me she had something to tell me. She told me she made a mistake, that she never should have gotten married, that she was never attracted to her husband, that she couldn't sleep the day that she got engaged, that she wanted a divorce. She said she had been watching me all this time, that she cried when she found out I was getting married, cried when she found out about my child. She said she wanted a divorce either way but asked if I would have her in the future. The emotion that I felt when I heard this overwhelmed me. I had previously thought that I had meant nothing to her, and I gave in to temptation and had slept with her. She says she wants to divorce either way, but that she wants a future with me. Is there any way this could be made right in God's eyes? I feel horrible about harming an innocent man and child. I know I shouldn't have had slept with her, but I still love her more than ever. I've been praying. Honestly, I can't believe the self-righteous jerk I've been. It all sounds great to preach that cheating is horrible, but then you get faced with the situation. And I failed. And it's important to note that I've had a million chances in the past to sleep with married women and I've never been tempted. But I know it was wrong to have slept with her. I just don't know what to do from here. I already told her that God comes first in my life, but I believe she is getting a divorce. Is there any way for this relationship to continue once there has been a divorce filed? It's true, and I told her that I don't want her feelings for me clouding her judgment to her husband. I don't think she should have a lifetime sentence of no bonding imposed upon her, but her husband deserves the chance to try and meet her needs. How can he get that with me around? But she doesn't think there is any way. The tricky part is she told me all this before we had slept together. I don't really believe her marriage is going to survive, but who am I to use that belief against her husband? I'm no one. I really screwed up when I crossed that bridge. This would be much easier to deal with if I didn't go there. I guess I kind of felt that he stole me away from her, so why can't I do the same? That my situation was different. Make me sick to think about my distorted thought processes. I want to be a man of honor and character, not a thief and destroyer. I don't think his family is going to survive whether I'm in the picture or not. At least that is what she says. Could she be lying? Of course, it's possible. But I never knew her to be a liar, and that's the truth. I asked her that question about the part-time parents. She said she had already discussed this with him. That it would be a 50-over-50 split with no child support ever, and if one person or the other started making way more money than the other, they would help out without the court's help. I really don't think she is going to change her tune, but again, my judgment probably isn't to be trusted right now. She has not told him as of yet. I think she doesn't know if it's the right thing to do. Do you? I told her that I had already gone too far in interjecting myself into the marriage and that the decision was hers. Basically, that her marriage is none of my business. First of all, I'm not significantly more beta these days than then. If anything, it's still too much bad boy and not enough reliable and stable guy. But yes, I am a man of faith these days. Absolutely. Second, the breakup was an epic nuclear meltdown. I don't want to get into the details, but it was as bad as they get. She has tried to contact me now and then over the years, but still angry from the breakup. I basically didn't give her the time of day. So, this isn't something that is brand new. Comment. You two never got over each other. Your being a bad boy contributed to her thinking she'd be better off with the stable, faithful type. But she went against her own peace in marrying him. Why did she do that? I feel sorry for her husband. By the way, I don't think good men should marry women who have had bad boys. That's my personal opinion. The good guys should marry the good girls who waited for those type of men because they appreciate them more so, and bonded with them first. From what I understand, it was a once-a-month thing at first. Now it's down to almost nothing. Her married bedroom life. This is part of the reason I don't see much hope for her marriage. I don't think there is a baseline level of attraction to return to. And yes, I know there is a chance she is lying to me. But again, one thing I always liked about her is that I never knew her to be a liar. One thing I thought of doing. Telling her we are done until she files for divorce, or maybe even gets the divorce. If our feelings lasted this long, why couldn't they last another year? But I want to make sure that would be okay with God before I make that decision. As to the devout versus lukewarm, it's a big part of the reason that my first marriage failed. That being said, her heart seems softer towards God now. My hope is that she would follow my lead. Would she? There is no way to know absolutely. As to the non-physical marriage thing, I just don't think she is capable of lying to that level. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. She's got too many details of too many events, and these were shared with me before she had any idea whether I would reciprocate or not. I just don't see the benefit to her to lie to that level, and again, someone that I never knew to be a liar. It just doesn't seem realistic that she lied. She was never a liar, and now she is the master at it. Keep in mind, this is before we had slept together, and I don't see the benefit to her to lie. I'm sorry, I just don't believe that. For the record, she felt as badly as I did after sleeping together. According to her, this started from day one. She said the first kiss was awkward. To put this in context, I asked her if there was any chance her husband is gay. I can't imagine putting up with what he has for so long. According to her, this has been going on from the beginning. According to her, it was her that cut off the bonding. I can't imagine that she is lying about this, as she is a very attractive woman. I told her today, boy, it would be nice if this could somehow work out where we would all be friends in the end, but that's just a fantasy, right? I get it. It rarely works out that way. I figure he'll hate me once he finds out. But at least if I don't bang her again, I could potentially look this dude in the eye and tell him I had enough respect for him to stop once I had crossed that line. Will it matter? I'm not naive. Probably not. I get everything I need from God. He gives my answers, my hope, my life, and every good thing I have in this world. Even when I fail him, as I most assuredly have in this situation. Without him, I am nothing. I told her if it's possible for us to be together, I don't want to build our new relationship on shame, deceit, and secrecy. That's why I was thinking that the best thing to do is not talk until she files for divorce. Then we can establish a new foundation. But I'm not sure how her husband is going to react, how things are going to shake down. It's hard to know what the right thing to do is. I do believe that we love each other, no matter what anyone says. Whether this is right or wrong, well, that's another thing entirely. Guys, I really screwed up, bad. I should not have had slept with her. I can say that and acknowledge it, and I mean it. I can feel it. I do not wish to harm another man and his family. And everyone is right, my hypocrisy is self-evident, transparent, and stunning. I talked to her, and she was really upset after viewing this thread. She mentioned that she felt I was leaving some facts out which will make me look very bad. Well, she was right. There was some cheating during our relationship, mostly by me. There was some cheating during my marriage as well, some one-night stand. I guess I rationalized it all, because I never had an affair in my life. I couldn't conceive of making a mistake and then refusing to stop making that mistake. I couldn't understand it. I've always been an emotional person, a person that feels things deeply, but I don't handle it like other people do. I tend to suppress the emotion, intellectualize it, use logic, go against the grain. So, in my mind I was blasting WS, which I was not a part of, because I never had an affair. In my mind these people were really bad people, because how could someone intentionally and continually harm another human being? Those that look closely may have noticed that I never called those that cheated and then stopped cheating on the carpet as harshly. Yes, I realize how wrong this was. All this being said, once I became a believer on Jesus Christ, He changed my heart in such a way that cheating does not have nearly the pull on me that it once did. I believe that I'll never cheat again on another person. This is the truth. To be 100% honest, most of my problems in my life, whether before or after I became a Christian, have been based around bonding. I've actually thought about chopping it off if I can't control myself for the purposes of the kingdom of God. I've always had a hard time with bonding. I would tell her to go back to her husband. I already tried that. She said no. So yes, I acknowledge a level of foolishness and denial for giving advice that was never going to be taken in the past. By comment, let's see if OP does better in the end. The cheated one goes cheating. The irony. Part 2 ending coming tomorrow morning. Stay tuned.